All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're doing a deep dive explainer on an ancient text where the Buddha lays out this absolutely brilliant metaphor for avoiding distractions on the paths to self-improvement. We are looking at the Mahāsāropama Sutta, which is also known as the longer Heartwood Simile Discourse. And honestly, it is an incredible roadmap of human psychology. It's entirely relevant to how we pursue our own goals today. But before we really dig into the ancient text itself, I gotta ask you a question. Have you ever started a noble journey or maybe set a massive, life-changing goal for yourself, only to get completely derailed by the little perks along the way? You know what I mean? Maybe you started out to master a craft, but you got a tiny taste of early success or praise, and suddenly you lost sight of the big picture. Well, that is exactly the human trap this explainer is going to unpack today. So just to set the scene for you here, the Buddha delivered this discourse at Vulture Peak, and it was right after a monk named Devadatta famously left the order. This departure actually prompted the Buddha to address his remaining monks about the true motivation for the holy life. The ultimate goal isn't just casual self-improvement. It is an earnest, almost desperate plea. Perhaps the end of this entire massive stress might be discerned. The goal is to end suffering, period. So, how do we actually get there? Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The quest for heartwood, 2. Twigs, leaves, and fame, 3. The bark of virtue, 4. Concentration in sapwood, 5. The true heartwood, and finally 6. Understanding unprovoked release. Kicking things off with Section 1, the quest for heartwood, seeking the core to end suffering. The Buddha gives us this amazing visual. He uses the metaphor of a person going into a forest specifically looking for heartwood, which, if you didn't know, represents the absolute strongest, most valuable structural core of a tree. But here's the catch. To get to that heartwood, you have to bypass all the superficial layers first. Our seeker has to journey past the twigs and leaves, hack off the outer bark, cut through the inner bark, and bypass the sapwood before ever reaching that core. Moving right into Section 2, twigs, leaves, and fame, the first trap of the holy life. Picture this seeker. They go out with the absolute best of intentions, to end the mass of stress and suffering. But almost immediately upon stepping onto the path, they encounter success. In the language of the text, they encounter gain, offerings, and fame. And what happens? The seeker grabs these superficial rewards and literally walks away, thinking they found the heartwood. They've essentially grabbed a handful of twigs and leaves and confused it for the core of the tree. And right here, we see this fascinating and really repetitive psychological trap at play. It's a vicious cycle of downfall. The seeker hits a milestone, right? Fame. They become gratified, and suddenly, their initial grand resolve just feels fulfilled. Then comes the ego. They exalt themselves and disparage others, literally saying, I am a person of fame, but these other monks are unknown. They become completely intoxicated by their own success, they fall into heedlessness, and ironically, they land right back in the exact same suffering and stress they originally tried to escape. Okay, on to Section 3, the bark of virtue. Progressing, but still missing the core. So let's say our seeker is a bit wiser this time. They completely ignore the fame and offerings. Good for them. They push deeper into their practice and achieve what the text calls consummation in virtue. Basically, they become incredibly morally upright and good. In our tree metaphor, they have successfully bypassed the twigs and leaves, and they have cut away the outer bark. But hold on, the exact same cycle of downfall happens all over again. The seeker becomes so gratified by their own goodness that they get a massive ego about it. They say, I am a person of virtue, but these others are unvirtuous. They start looking down on everyone else. Their ego completely hijacks their moral progress. They become intoxicated by their own virtue, lose their way, and walk out of the forest holding nothing but outer tree bark. All right, Section 4, concentration and sapwood. Higher states, but familiar pitfalls. As we go deeper into the text, the milestones get profoundly spiritual. A seeker might bypass fame, they might bypass virtue, and they might actually achieve consummation in concentration, which is the inner bark of deep, unified meditation. But listen, if they get arrogant about their focus, they fail. Or maybe they push even further to the sapwood, achieving profound knowledge and vision. But once again, if they brag that others dwell in ignorance, they fall short. They mistake the sapwood for the heartwood. The danger is identical. So this contrast is absolutely crucial. The distracted monk achieves an intermediate step, gets a dopamine hit, feels like their resolve is fulfilled, and lets their ego run completely wild. But the focused monk, their resolve is explicitly not fulfilled by these intermediate steps. They experience the virtue, the concentration, the profound vision, but they stay humble. They don't disparage anyone else. They just put their head down and keep pushing deeper into the forest. Which brings us to section 5, the true heartwood, the ultimate goal of the holy life. Finally, our focused seeker cuts away the twigs, the bark, the sapwood, and reaches the absolute core. The text defines this ultimate goal as a non-occasional liberation. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, the translator notes provided with this text give us some wonderful insight here. Non-occasional means it is a release entirely beyond time and conditionality. Unlike those earlier states of concentration that eventually fade when you stop meditating, this transcendent release covers ultimate unbinding. Once you reach it, it is impossible to fall from it. It literally cannot be lost. And to explain how we get to the state, the translator provides this really striking analogy. The path does not cause the mountain to be. It simply leads you there. Think about that for a second. All the virtue, all the concentration, all the steps we took, they don't manufacture or cause this ultimate liberation to exist. Just like a hiking trail doesn't build a mountain. It simply guides you to a permanent reality that was already there, just waiting to be found. To really wrap our heads around the magnitude of this heartwood, we need to look at section 6, understanding unprovoked release. We are going to dive into some ancient physics here that just beautifully ties this whole explainer together. The Buddha describes this final heartwood awareness release using a specific Pali term, akupa. Now, while it's sometimes translated as unshakable, it literally translates to unprovoked. And to understand why unprovoked is the ultimate goal, we have to understand how ancient thinkers viewed the natural world. We got to look at the ancient theory of properties, or dhatu. The ancients believed elements like liquid, fire, and wind are naturally calm, but when they are provoked, when they're agitated, they cause disasters. Provoked liquid creates massive floods. Provoked fire causes wildfires. And they applied this exact same physics to the human mind. When psychological elements like sensuality are provoked, the result is mental fever and total chaos. So the core takeaway from these translator notes is just profound. Anything that relies on provocation is inherently unstable and subject to change. Think about it. If your happiness relies on the provocation of fame, it's going to end. If your peace relies on the provocation of deep forced concentration, it will eventually subside the minute you stand up from the meditation cushion. But true release, the ultimate heartwood, it is unprovoked. It isn't caused by the agitation or provocation of anything. And because it is entirely unprovoked, it is a state of total, permanent, unchanging peace. It is literally the eye of the storm, entirely free from the volatile physics of the world. And this beautifully wraps up the Buddha's entire lesson to his monks. He says, the unprovoked awareness release, that is the purpose of this holy life. That is its heartwood, that its final end. He's desperately urging them, do not settle for the temporary high of the twigs of fame. Don't let your ego swell at the bark of virtue or the sapwood of knowledge. Keep pushing, humbly, until you hit that unprovoked release. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I really want to leave you with this challenging question. If your ultimate goal in life is to find your own heartwood, your true, unshakable core, what superficial twigs and leaves are you still clinging to today? Are you letting small tastes of praise or minor milestones stall your ultimate progress? It's really something to think about. Keep your eyes on the heartwood and never stop climbing. Thanks for joining me today.